So the International Court of Justice process is really important, and what we have is a situation in Gaza where there is evidence accumulated by various international human rights organizations, by investigators, by organizations like mine, of really serious war crimes. If you take those war crimes together and you add to that the intention behind them, what South Africa have found is that there is a serious risk of genocide. And what South Africa have done at the ICJ is triggered their obligations, and it's not something that they just wanted to do. It's an obligation they have as being party to the Genocide Convention. What they've asked the ICJ to do is to do two things. One is to determine whether what they think is happening on the ground in Gaza is actual genocide. So you have the physical act as well as the intention behind that, as they've outlined in their very comprehensive 84-page application. But they've asked for something else to happen as well. And they've asked for the International Court of Justice to intervene immediately by implementing provisional measures, including a ceasefire, with regards to the actual war that's happening between Israel and people on the ground in Gaza. We started at the very beginning of the war process to, once we saw what was happening on the ground to Palestinians and what we foresaw was going to be happening on the ground to Palestinians, we initiated something called the Justice for Gaza campaign, which was an investigative campaign to identify evidence of alleged war crimes. And what that meant was not just collecting evidence from social media and open source material, but we have been interviewing people that were on the ground in Gaza that came out carrying with them photographic and video evidence of alleged war crimes. We interviewed them, we took their statements, we put that information together and we analysed it and prepared a criminal complaint. And what that revealed for us was that there was evidence for law enforcement agencies to trigger an investigation and potentially arrest individuals here in the UK for their alleged participation in war crimes. So we're in a stage now where we are not in a position to talk about any of the people that we have written to, and we're not identifying the people in our complaint, and there's a very important reason for that. The important reason for that is we want Scotland Yard to be able to carry out their investigation without interference, and we don't want the suspects that we've named in our confidential complaint to Scotland Yard to be tipped off or destroy evidence or to work in some political way to interfere with our process. So at this stage, we're not in a position where we're going to talk about what anybody in particular has said. And just about those letters that we originally sent, I just want to make it clear that those letters were not accusing individuals of war crimes, but the risk that politicians carried of being complicit in war crimes if they continued or supported war crimes in Gaza in the way that we saw that they potentially were at risk of doing. Boris Johnson accused Scotland Yard of politicising the crime. I mean, really, it's a ridiculous position to take. What's really happening is Boris Johnson was trying to politicise the situation. What we know about Scotland Yard is that they have a statutory duty under the International Criminal Court Act, a British act, to investigate war crimes and to collect evidence and pass that evidence to the International Criminal Court. And all Scotland Yard were doing was doing that duty, and that's a perfectly appropriate thing for them to do. And we saw them do it with regards to the Ukraine, and we didn't see any criticism of them doing that. We saw them doing that with regards to October the 7th with Israel, and now we see them doing it with regards to the situation following October the 7th up to present day in the occupied Palestinian territories. It's what Scotland Yard are meant to do, it's what they're obliged to do, and I think it's really important that political actors, whether they're in government or not in government, don't interfere with that process.